Okay, it looks like the past two stories may have to put a warning on them. This one I might have to too. Okay, this one is part one, story 6, the Great Rebellion. Okay, you can imagine how people felt, and at dawn of another day found them hopelessly discouraged. I can hear the children asking their mothers, "Aren't we going to get the milk and honey today?" "No, darlings, not today," the heartbroken mothers replied. "Not for many, many days." Oh yeah, this is the right before they had to walk for 40 years. Then the children cried too. Some of the men climbed on a mountain peak to look again at the land they hoped for and dreamed about so long. For there it seemed so near that they thought it was a shame to leave it and go back into the wilderness. "Lo, we be here," they said one to one another, "and will go up unto the place which the Lord hath promised." But it was too late. When Moses heard about the plan, he sent word to them not to try it. "Go not up, for the Lord is not among you," he said, "that ye be not smitten before your enemies." See, yeah, because we're in the Amalekites. "For the Amalekites and the Canaanites are there before you, and ye shall fall by the sword, because ye are turned away from the Lord. Therefore the Lord will not be with you." Yeah, they're fighting the Amalekites. See, it did flip back to the old time. So this is just a continuation of the previous book. Just more detail. Okay? And so if you're getting confused, I kind of was for a second, but then I'll go, oh, yeah, yeah. Okay? Let's get back to the story. But they went just the same, and no one came of it, and no good came of it. Singing and shouting to keep up their courage, they marched across the border, but they never captured even the first hill. The people who lived there came and drove them out. It was a very sorry group of men who who returned to the camp that night. They knew how that it was no use trying to go to Canaan. Their last hope had gone. Soon almost the whole camp was talking angrily against Moses. Why should they have to listen to this old man? What mess had he made of everything? Had he not taken 15 months for a journey that should have been over in 2 weeks? And now that they had reached the border of Canaan, at last, he wanted them to go back into the dreadful wilderness for another 40 years? Absurd. They wouldn't do it. Why should they? Who was Moses anyway? And then it has a picture of them uh, retreating. I would say retreating. That has an illustration of them retreating. Okay, let's go to the next page. The Great Rebellion was on. The leader was Korah. Korah, a cousin of Moses. This is where what I said, his cousin did something. A cousin of Moses and about the same age. He may even had looked like Moses, or both had the same grandfather, uh, Kohath, the son of Levi. That's his name, Kohath, Kohath. And he was the son of Levi, or a son of Levi. Perhaps the one reason why so many others were all ready to follow him. Oh, that's a good thing. That he looked like Moses, and that's why they probably thought, well, they knew better, but anyway, that's what it says it too. Anyway, he stirred up no less than 250 princes to the assembly, famous in the congregation, men of renown. So he got 250 princes to assemble, to revolt. Let's get back. And together they marched on Moses and Aaron. Oh yeah, I remember that. When you read the real stuff, you can remember. Remember, there's different Bible versions that will tell you. Okay, let me get back to the story. You take too much upon yourself, they said insolently, insolently, insolently. If all the congregation is holy, and the Lord is among them, why do you set yourselves above them? You take too much upon yourselves. You take too much upon yourselves, replied Moses, using their own words. Then he told them he was willing to let the Lord decide who should be the leader. Take your censers, he told them, and put fire therein, and put incense in there before the Lord tomorrow. And it shall be that the man whom the Lord hath chose, he shall be holy. Then he sent messengers to fetch the other two conspirators, Dathan and Abiram, yeah, that's what it says, Dathan and Abiram, members of the tribe of Reuben. But they refused to come. Instead, they sent back this impotent message. Impotent message. It is a small thing that thou hast brought us up out of the land that flowed with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness. Thou hast not brought us into the land that is flowing with milk and honey, or given us inheritance of fields and vineyards. Wilt thou put out the eyes of these men? We will not come. Okay, so these guys didn't want to come. Alright, let's get back to this. No one had ever talked to Moses like that before, and he was very angry. To think that they spoke of Egypt as a land flowing with milk and honey. Egypt, the land of their bondage. And to think they would suggest he wanted to be a dictator who had put out the eyes of those who disagree with him. Lord, it says Lord, he cried in sorrow, I have not taken one donkey. It does have them. One, it does have that word I don't want to say. Uh, Lord, he cried in sorrow, I have not taken one donkey from them. Neither have I hurt one of them. The time of test had come. God's whole plan of salvation was in danger. If the rebels should win, all he had tried to do for Israel would be lost. That night, the whole camp was filled with excitement, with excited rumors. In hundreds of tents, bitter, anger words were spoken. Friends of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram went everywhere, using everybody to meet in the tabernacle in the morning to see the end of Moses and his tyranny. Early the next morning, as the people were coming toward the tabernacle, God said to Moses and Aaron, separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. And they fell upon their faces and said, O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall not one man sin, and wilt thou be wroth with all the congregation? Confusing words. It says, if I can translate it, he basically they were praying for him, and they didn't want the punishment to happen. All right, and that was in King James when I read it, so I was like, yeah. Okay. So in the moment of crisis, these two dear old men prayed for the very people who were plotting against them. And then it has an illustration of them talking secretly at night. Okay, you go to the next page. Okay, then Moses strode through the gathering crowd to the tent of Korah, the tent where Korah, Dathan, and Abiram were meeting. Stand back, he called to the seeing throngs of lookers, onlookers. Part, I pray you, for the tents of these wicked men, ye be consumed in all their sins. A great silence fell as he spoke again. Hereby ye shall know that the Lord hath sent me to do all these works, he said, for I have not done them of my own hand. If these men die with common death of all men, then the Lord hath not sent me. But if the Lord make a new thing, and the earth open her mouth and swallowed them up, and go down quickly to the pit, then ye shall understand that these men have provoked the Lord. Now he is surely gone too far, some said. Does he think he can make the earth open up and swallow his enemies? Hardly had they spoken, then there was a terrible roar, and the earth did open up, right where Korah, Dathan, and Abraham were standing. Suddenly, all three of them, with all they owned, went down alive into the pit, and the earth closed up upon them. Oh, that's cool. Think about it. It opened up and closed back. I've actually seen that in some of these sci-fi movies. So is this sci-fi or real? I mean, come on. Gotta think. Okay, let's get back to the story. Shrieks filled the air as the people fled in panic. Then sheets of flame swept about the 250 men with a fire filled since with the fire. Okay. Then sheets of flame spread about the 250 men with the fire-filled censers, and all were burnt to death. Oh, so they were doing their censers, and they exploded. Well, just think about that. Yeah, this is definitely going to have a warning. You could think that this would have been enough to convince everybody as to who was right and who was wrong. But no. You have killed the people of the Lord, shouted the friends of the rebels. As they did so, people began to fall down right and left, all throughout the crowd. Even Moses was surprised. There is wrath, there is wrath gone out from the Lord, he cried to Aaron. The plague is begun. Afraid that perhaps, after all, God would consume everybody, he called to his brother, take a censer and put fire therein from off the altar, and put in incense, and go quickly unto the congregation, and make an atonement for them. Aaron went with his smoking censer in his hand. He ran to the midst of the congregation. Imagine it, a kindly old man, 55 years of age, running this way and that, waving his censer and crying to the Lord to spare the people who had done so great a wrong. Here was love most wonderful. The Bible says that Aaron stood between death and the living, and the plague was stayed. And then it has an illustration of all the horror. And it's a two-pager. And that's the illustration of the horror that happened. And those guys got swallowed up in the explosions and all that stuff. And that was part 1, story 6. And we're going to take a break before I go to the next one. And that was I already got about a lot of ones that have warnings in. Okay, talk to you a bit.